May 11, 2022 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, please call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Present.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Present.
Mr. Dotson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the pledge of allegiance. Mr. Mastriani.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Ellen Brown, would you come up and introduce everybody that you brought with you?
This is my daughter, Helen Claus. I'm Ellen Brown, the president of the Tri-County Challengers Baseball League. This is Marina Reynolds, who is also my vice president of the league. And this is her son, Jacob. Jared, sorry. Jared. Call him my husband's name. And these two are both one of our players. He's on the little kids team and she's on the adult team.
The town would like to present the Rotterdam Challengers Tri-County Baseball League with a proclamation. Whereas the Rotterdam Challengers Tri-County Baseball League was duly formed on April 25, 1992, with the principle of helping children and adults who are physically and mentally challenged to be involved in a sport that they love. And whereas the Rotterdam Challengers has richly served the Rotterdam community for 30 years and continues to be an outstanding example in the town of Rotterdam. And whereas the Rotterdam Challengers offer a free baseball league to anyone aged 5 to 99, child or adult, with a handicap and or special needs. And whereas the Rotterdam Challengers host baseball games Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. located at Steiner Field in Rotterdam Junction from late spring into early summer. And whereas the Rotterdam Challengers is run on donations from the community and has an enormous number of volunteers, coaches, and family members that devote their time and caring hearts to help make this league thrive. And whereas the Rotterdam Challengers players have magnificent hearts and spirited minds, all while having a great time socializing with other people, playing cooperatively, and getting exercise together. Now, therefore, I, Molly A. Collins, Supervisor of the Town of Rotterdam, on behalf of the Town Board, Town Administration, and grateful residents of the Town of Rotterdam, do hereby extend our appreciation to the Rotterdam Challengers on their 30th anniversary. Thank you.
And then I'll give them to you to see what
I was just reminding by Mr. Sue, the opening day for the Challengers is this coming Saturday, the 14th at 3 o'clock. So now we're going to move to privilege of the floor. I will remind you of this. Anybody obviously can speak. You have 4 minutes, and Mr. Kingley is going to be my timer tonight. I forgot a watch, so he'll hit the gavel when your time is up and you can finish your sentence. The other thing is, if a lot of you are here for the information meeting, if there's some questions that you want to ask, we usually don't answer during privilege of the floor. But remember, at the close of the meeting, we have other people here, the water operator, someone from crime engineering, that will also be here to answer your questions. So, you know, like I say, please feel free to speak at privilege of the floor, but if you have questions you want to answer, that'll be after the meeting, okay?
I just want to make sure everybody that wants to speak has already signed in. Correct? See here. Oh, sorry. If you want to speak, you have to sign in. If you have not, you have to sign in now.
Dylan.
You can't hear her.
I'm sorry. I'll try our best. Yeah. I'll speak up. Anybody can speak during privilege of the floor now. Okay? Can you hear me in the back? All right. But if you have questions about the water and the bills, the water meeting, anything like that, remember that if you ask a question and you want it answered, that will be at the informational meeting at the end of the meeting. So I don't want to discourage anyone from speaking now, but if you have a specific question that you're looking for an answer to, that would come at the end of the meeting when we go into the informational part, okay? Am I loud enough?
Are we going to be able to ask questions during that?
We're hoping to have an open forum where the public can ask questions, and hopefully we can provide you with the answers. And I'll try to speak up. Yes, I did. And I didn't wear a watch tonight. Mr. Tingley's going to be the monitor for time. And you all have 4 minutes to speak at privilege of the floor. When it gets to 4 minutes, he'll hit the gavel and obviously finish your sentence, and then we'll move on to the next person, okay? Everybody here? Everybody okay? All right, Ms. Marco, the first person.
Thomas Ties.
Thomas Dice, 1663 Main Street, Pattersonville, town of Rotterdam. Madam Supervisor, I called you last month, and my purpose was to say there was no good reason for installing water meters in our water district. And I left my name and my number, and I asked you to call me back if you had any good reasons for this push for water meters in this water district. And I'm glad you didn't call me back. I've lived in my house for 44 years, and it was about 40 years ago, they were putting a water line through, and it was going to go through like the front of my house. And I was told they would never meter the water. Well, we would be responsible for the infrastructure and maintenance. And that's the way it's been for that 40 years. Now I hear there's reasons or whatever that talk about putting water meters in. They want to take the water that's under my property, your property, pump it back to your house and meter it and charge you for it. There's absolutely no reason that I could, justifiable reason for doing such. But obviously, the water meter people, they're going to make a lot of money. Unfortunately, there's crooked politicians, there's crooked state people, there's crooked DCEC people. You don't have to look very far. We had a lieutenant governor that resigned under dubious wrongdoings. We had a governor resign under dubious wrongdoing. And unfortunately, we had a town supervisor who spent time in prison for wrongdoing.
Amen.
But I don't want to see any of this happening. But it's something we got to be vigilant about. Now, the DEC might say, well, the water conservation. Well, most of the water we use goes back into the aquifer. But our water goes everywhere. It goes to Montgomery County. That water doesn't come back. It goes across the river to Scotia, Schenectady, and whatever. And even those guys extend their lines to Saratoga and Albany. That's where the problem is if we're worried about any water conservation. And one last side note with the DEC is we can't always count on them for doing the right thing. They put a dump over our aquifer, and they said it would only be there for 10 years, so I was told by some elderly people, who are no longer here, and it was going on for 25 years, and it took us 5 years of coming to this meeting to finally get the DEC to realize that ain't such a good idea. But to sum it up, we really shouldn't have water meters. We haven't had it for 40 years, and I don't see a need for it at this point in time. Thank you.
Melvin Mintz.
Melvin Mintz, 2273 Helderberg Avenue. My subject is completely different. I'd like the board to look into if we have any money that we can redo the painting of the parking lot at the main city hall, town hall, to be restriped. Find a company to restripe it so that when we do pull in with some sense of common sense of where we park and how we park. and I think it should be striped. One of the positions I had, and again, I have a lousy habit of bragging too much, was when I was in downtown and I created a free parking system. I was also on the school board of Mohonaset. And that year, they were just working on the parking lots. It was from experience of downtown, and I had recommended to the board, the first meeting, that we restripe the lot. It wasn't in the contract at all. But they didn't vote it in until 3 years later when I got a letter that they decided to strike the lots. And the idea was to teach the students how to park in a parking lot. And that's why I'm recommending that we restripe the lot at our main town hall. The other thing, something came across my desk this afternoon, and I haven't had time to talk to the fire chief at all about it. But I understand there's a state law pertaining to when you can do burning. And the thing is that up north, they have snow maybe up to this point in time and rain, so they can do fire burning. But to start fire burning down here, where our grass already is turning green and the weather is getting very nice, we can start to have fires. And yet it's a state law that has the dates and everything. And I'm going to examine it closer because I think it should be re-examined when we allow fire burning in the different areas of the state. What happens up north opposed to what's happening down here and further towards the main city, it should be under more control, not a general blanket that's the same for the whole state. It's something that I'd like you maybe you could look into and understand what I'm saying. I would appreciate that. Just for a change, because we do have the water concern here we all have about meters, and I'm sure there'll be enough people talking about it. You don't need me. Thank you.
David Bills?
David Bills with 1390 Main Street, Rotterdam Junction. I've got questions for the water, but I'll skip that. But I'm going to talk about the water district. We are, I don't know where you're new town board. I understand this. But Water District 1, which we really are, I don't know where they came up with Water District 3. We are the original water district for Rotterdam. The original water district is in Rotterdam Junction, District 1. The land where the wells sit was donated by Cannages. Mr. Cannage donated it, and he specified in there to be used only for water. We have a radio tower sitting on top of our wells over there, and it's got a big transformer sitting there. And I went over there and I talked to the water guy and found out that there's only one water meter, and we only got, or one electric meter, and we only have one little tower, one little antenna that points to the water tower 20 feet up, and the rest of them are Glenville, Schenectady County, and all that. And I want to know why Water District 1, 2, 3, and 4 are paying the electric bill for that tower. Thank you.
Andrea Capola?
Hi, good evening. Andrea Capola, 625 River Road. First of all, I would like to reiterate from 2 or 3 years ago, the government of the United States does not go to Anaheim to have sessions of the Senate or the legislature. So thank you for coming out to see us. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming. First of all, I'd like to know, I serve on a couple of committees, and one of them is the conservation of the town, and we didn't have a quorum last time we met. So I want you to know that I support the legislation or the rulings that we're going to have some water rules about watering at certain times of the day and certain you know, you can water this time or that time, and depending on the number, the street side you're on, that would save water, and would also, because my husband's a fireman, I'd like it to, there'd be enough recharge in all the water towers that we could put out fires. And third thing I'd like to ask is there any designation of whether we're going to be moving to Kmart or not, the town offices? That's okay, it goes with my personality. Yeah, okay, so the reason I'm asking, I have a query about the conservation board and the historian and the Parks Committee would like some space in either of the existing town building or the new building, and we're wondering if we're gonna see that happen. And I know you know, but we submitted it to the last board, and I'd like to resubmit it at the next town board meeting. So if you have any insight whether we're gonna move or not, let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nathan Baynard?
You can skip it, go ahead.
You said you can skip it.
I'm sorry?
Skip them. Skip them.
Oh, skip. Okay. Carmela Hanley?
Skipping. And I got questions about the water.
All right, so you want to,
Yeah, right.
Renee Mertney?
Renee Mertens, 2720 Maiden Lane, Rotterdam. Just wanted to make everyone aware, if you weren't, definitely follow the Rotterdam webpage. It's rotterdamny.org. They've had the plan up there for everyone to review. I did a search, just a simple search like Control F and put a meter. You can find meter everywhere along the way. Not once did I find residential meters in there, so I just thought I'd just get people to start looking at the website a little bit more. So anyways, thank you. I'm going to be here for the information.
Joe Powell?
Good evening. My name is Joe Pollack. I live over on Alexander Drive. Yes, I'm still irritated from the last meeting over paying $600 for my water. Find it totally ridiculous, not for the reason of paying for it. I understand we all pay for everything. Wonderful. We're all about paying our fair share. Is it our fair share? Supposedly we're paying 1.5% more than the town of Rotterdam. We're getting inferior water for a higher price. Just sounds like a backdoor deal. Of course, Rotterdam's good at that. Gentleman stated last time we should pay, and I think we all agree on that. Maybe there's common sense answers, and they're all my responsibility to know. But I guess I depend on you, the board, to do what's right and to get me the answers. I shouldn't have to chase down each one of you to find out something and get a convoluted view at best, because nobody trusts anybody. But why do we sell water for X and have to pay 6 or 8 times X to buy it back? Why is Albany County trying to unload a water reservoir they have in Fisher's Ferry because they have plenty of water? They've owned it for 25 or 30 years so that they had backup. Found out they don't need it. They're trying to sell it. The last I knew, Guilderland was in Albany County. Why don't they get their water from Albany County wells? Would seem to make sense. Trying to find out if our board's working for us or for Guilderland or Albany County. Why, if we have a water shortage, are we putting up so many apartments? I've heard some people say it's because the young people today don't want to own houses. I like to think it's because they can't afford it. because government is in our business, telling us what to do it, how to say it, how to be polite, how to treat everybody equal. It's not working, obviously. Guy in the White House said this isn't his fault. He shouldn't have taken the job. The buck's got to stop somewhere. In this town, it's got to stop with you guys. Last thing I have is something I remembered after the last meeting. It irritated me. Part about pointing fingers. Sorry, Evan, and I'll talk to you later. Some people call it pointing fingers. I call it accountability. If you can't be accountable to these people here and the rest of the people that you're dealing with, honestly and openly, you're not accountable. You're not doing your job. If you want to think that's called pointing fingers, you're wrong. It's calling holding people to do their job. If you're not getting paid, you get a push. Thank you.
Ron Peck.
Okay, well, this is pretty fast. All I want to say is that learning about drought and learning about the aquifer and how it works is more important than, just thinking we need to not get meters or we need meters. I found from the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, which we just had a meeting of our Rotterdam Planning Commission, and it outlines, well, it talks about like the drought in 2016, which went from Western New York to Massachusetts. Then there was another one in in 2017 it recovered, but it wasn't enough to cover 2018's reserve supply. So all I'm trying to say is that you really need to learn about how water's priced and everything in this, basically. This kind of comes from the Capital District Regional. Somebody said you don't know who to trust. Well, they use the Earth Atmospheric Science Department National Drought Monitor, NOAA Climate Prediction Center. So, this is the place you can go that's not, hearsay or something. This is where people get their information or ignore their information. Okay, that's it.
Is there anybody here who wants to speak? Is there anybody here who wants to speak to privilege of the floor but forgot to sign up? Privilege of the floor is closed. We're going to go to resolutions now, and I'll try to speak up. Our first resolution is Resolution 159.22, or 159 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To appoint Marcus Montgomery to the position of Comptroller for the town of Rotterdam.
Okay, any discussion? Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christopher?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. The next resolution is Resolution 160 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To appoint Jeffrey R. Breer as Building Inspector.
Okay. Any discussion? Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 161 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To amend Resolution Number 21.22 of the year 2022, appoint Paul Sebesta as Deputy Comptroller Part-Time.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
I'd just like to explain my vote. When we brought Mr. Sebesta on as a financial consultant, I had some concerns about the way we were setting up that contract. I have to say Mr. Sebesta has been quite responsive to my questions, quite knowledgeable, and I really thank him for his efforts to help us get streamlined since January 1st. So I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Our resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 162 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To amend Resolution Number 345.20, adopting employee benefit package for elected and appointed officials.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
I'd like to explain my vote. I'm going to vote no for this. I remember this motion, and I remember the spirit behind it. The spirit behind it was the intention of if there was, someone, whether it was due to reasons of child care or to take care of somebody elderly, if they had an opportunity to contribute as a part-time employee to the town, they could participate in the health insurance program, of which they still would pay 35% of. I think it kind of makes it a little bit, in today's world of competing with so many other entities for good employees, I think it kind of dilutes the opportunity to hire good employees, especially female employees, who are usually the primary caregivers of their children and the primary caregivers of elderly parents. And I don't really think, in my analysis, it was such a great financial burden that it has to be eliminated. So therefore, I'm going to vote no.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
No.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes, and I'd like to explain my vote. I understand what the town, if you had someone that did have children that was working part-time, even paying 35%, then it goes down to 30, then to 20%. You're talking about $20,000, and when the resolution, a year for that coverage, and when the resolution was passed, there was no stipulation as to how many hours that part-time person had to work, which means the person could have worked 1 hour a week, and yet the town, over the course of the year, might be paying $20,000. So that is why I'm voting no. Okay.
Wait.
Or voting yes, right?
Okay, so there's 2 no and 3 yes, and resolution passes, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Resolution passes. So the next one is Resolution 163 of the year 2022.
To approve budget transfers to the 2022 budget.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christo. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 164 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers from the Highway Department for gas and diesel.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Christo. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 165 of the year 2022.
To enter into agreement for the town highway paving.
Okay,
I'll
any
make the
discuss-
motion.
Motion by Mr. Christo. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 166 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To authorize an agreement with Fiscal Advisors and Marketing, Inc.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Next resolution is Resolution 167 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
To create Fund Line H127 for via port expenditures.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 168 of the year 2022, the clerk will read.
Surplus property from the New York State Office of General Services.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 169 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Second Amendment to Sartoli and Rome Avenue drainage improvements.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 170 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Seeker project determination of non-significance for the Rotterdam 6th well project.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 171 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
To authorize agreement with Mohawk Valley Society Local 85-133 for live music.
Any discussion? I'd like to tell, it's for the summer program, that we have the 3 concerts down at the senior center. So that's what it's for. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 172 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
To accept revenue from the town clerk's office for the month of April.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Motion by
second
Mr.
it.
Dodson, second by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 173 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Accept town board meeting minutes from April 27th, 2022.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 174 of the year 2023.
Authorized purchase of chlorine gas.
Any discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 175 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
Confirmation, revocation, readoption of bond resolutions.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. That concludes our resolutions for this evening. Oh, we now have to move, are there any liaison reports? Okay, and do any of the board members have anything they wish to say under miscellaneous? We're quiet tonight.
Well, I'd like to acknowledge it's Law Enforcement Appreciation Month. You know, we take for granted that we live in a pretty safe and secure country, and you know that has to do with the police force that keeps order in our town. They have a difficult job. You know, we all like to blow up on difficult interactions that we come across, but they have to keep their cool every time they engage with the public, and they deserve appreciation. And this is Law Enforcement Appreciation Month, so make sure keep that in your mind. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to say under miscellaneous? Okay, this concludes our business for tonight. May I have a motion to adjourn?
We can adjourn it.
You should do the public information session during the meeting.
All right, made a mistake, we got to do the public information during the meeting, so I won't close out the meeting. And now, yeah, we're going to set up some easels so people can actually see. And while I'm doing that, there are a couple other people here that we brought in to help answer questions for you. One is Mr. Doug Cole. He's from Prime Engineering that does most of our work on water, wells and water systems. In the back is Mr. Peterson. Justin.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Okay, if everybody would stop talking. Okay, this is Mr. Doug Cole. He's from Prime Engineering. He does a lot of our work on the water, the water, the wells, the distribution system. In the back, if he can come up front, is Mr. Justin Peterson. He is our senior water operator, so he's the one who operates the wells on Rice Road and across the street. So we tried to have a representative of the DEC also present, but they were unable to come. All right, so you can address your questions to any of us or all of us, and we will try to get the answers. Mr. Dodson is putting up some maps to show exactly where the water districts are.
We do have handouts.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have handouts about 8 pages here, just to give some background information on water conservation and metering.
Thank you for everything you did for the challenge, and I'll see you Saturday.
To pass along, so I'm not quite sure how many people are here tonight, but if you need to share, that'd be great. So here's would you like one?
How you doing, Justin? Lisa. Good, how are you? Isn't that awesome?
That document on the website, if there's all enough copies. Oh, you want more? That's fine. Oh, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you got me? We could have shared Samantha, are you coming Saturday? Oh, I gotta be home with the kids. Yeah, Paul DiLorenzo, got big food truck, and he also sponsored the team.
If I can get them down there now,
It'll be, it's at 3 o'clock now. It's not 1. Oh,
now.
no, I wasn't sure if you knew they switched the time. It was 1.
Yeah, I think there was
to 3. Okay. Just want to make sure.
It's hard. The International Guard's having their big
Yes, that's
readiness thing this weekend, the alarm, going off, so he's been there all weekend ready.
That's important, but it'll be a lot of fun. I love the challenge you're doing. That's really
Great program.
Oh my gosh, wonderful. They don't charge for the kids to play. So we do everything on donations. Diane was wonderful and helped us raise money on the donations. Diane, that was really generous. That's a big one. Well, because they don't charge like Rotterdam and all that. So your money goes to the big deal. They could very good organization. She does a great job. She does. So did Is he going to come, you think? I don't know. I I don't know. I'm just so glad that she's asked me to be a part of it, you know, because it's very, for me, it's rewarding and it's a blessing.
If it'll make a Saturday, but there's something else I won't talk to me now.
No, she's over here. Diane knows, and Diane knows me get very good. That's how we raise money. Family charge. So all that goes to, yes, that's just, yeah, Paul is locked out by getting this, he's been on the list of but if you want to personally donate anything, why don't you take a picture of this? Samantha?
Well, if it's a question,
Yeah, I think we just, because there's a lot of people here, it'd be nice to answer all their questions, and we could use whatever props we have to help answer your questions.
So if you raise your hand and there's something that, you know, a question you want to ask, this gentleman raised his hand first.
Yep, so the first question I have, maybe first in the board,
it's the only one I
because
hear.
there might be some people here that don't know. What is your reasoning behind metering the water in Rotterdam Junction? Is it a water conservation thing, or what is the concept behind it? Because we live in one of the biggest, most adequate aquifers, I would probably say, in all of New York. We do not and should not need to pay extra or meter our water. It's a benefit of living in Rotterdam Junction. If you want to meter at areas that don't have adequate water, move on out to Rotterdam Junction, buy a house, you won't have to pay for your water. There is no reason whatsoever that anybody in this water district should have to pay for their water, meter it. If you want to make it a maintenance thing, that's fine. I don't know your concept behind it, but I cannot listen to somebody say that all this metering and all this is for conservation. Go to an area that needs water conservation. Rotterdam Junction and this water district does not need it.
If I may address part of that, if I may, okay, just for the record, sir, neither the previous administration or this administration is in favor of water. Never would they.
Then why are we doing this?
Here's what happened, okay, if I may,
That's it, point blank.
if I may, none of us here are interested in
Well,
putting
then,
water.
there you go, we're done. It's not,
Right.
we don't need it.
But what happened was in 2013, and Mr. Cole, please correct me if I'm wrong, the state passed some legislation that if you're going to increase capacity, build a new well, anything like that, you had to have a conservation plan, a compliance plan. So in the 2019 application, which our previous administration entered, we attached a metering plan, okay? No, none of the previous board ever advocated for water meters. In fact, our position was very clear. There's no economic benefit to metering residences in the town of Rotterdam, anywhere.
People right now, in this economy, in this town, cannot
Agreed.
afford
Agreed.
to have more
So,
money taken from
and
them.
keep in mind that our argument was that, you know, I own a restaurant, I'm already metered. Businesses are already metered, they're the big users. So, unfortunately, a lot of misinformation got out there that somebody was pushing for water meters. That somebody can speak for themselves. It was nobody on the previous administration, and I will always stand on that position, and most of my colleagues on this board will stand on that position. Now, at one point, will the state put a gun to our heads? Well, then that's when we can fight it at that level. But we've always advocated that there is no economic benefit to metering residences in the town of Rotterdam. That's exactly what you're saying.
Everybody hears that.
Yeah.
The board is not in agreement that we need metering.
It was part of a compliance
To
plan.
not meter our water.
There's part of a compliance plan when you submit an application to build a new well, to improve well, to increase capacity, you have to submit this paperwork that says that here's our metering plan. Okay? But
You
submit it.
guys know, there's plenty of ways around your metering plan. So you can't sell that to us.
Well, but the thing is, nobody's pushing it. Nobody was pushing it, nobody has pushed it. We've always taken the position that there's no economic benefit, okay?
So why are we getting $600 bills?
That's a separate question. We'll answer
Separate
that.
question, separate entity, separate item, has nothing to do with meters.
I also would like to answer your question. In 2019, I wasn't elected, I spoke out at the board meeting. In my opinion, just my opinion, and I wish the DEC was here. When we had, first of all, the fifth well was put in after the flood out here. And it was put at a high enough elevation that if, God forbid, the floodwaters came again, that well would not get contaminated. It was a high producing, it was a new well. For whatever reason, Gilderland reached out to the town of Rotterdam and said, we'd like to buy your water. I spoke out against it then, because when you increase your water withdrawal permit, in my estimation, it sends a red flag to DEC, and they say, whoa, wait a second, if you're gonna pump that much water, are you really conserving water? In my opinion, that's what started this whole thing in 2019, all right? And I was against it then, I'm against it now. I think I've been nailed as being for it because I showed a water meter. No, none of you knew. I talk to people on a regular basis that say, I didn't know we were selling water to Gilderland. So when I came into the office and I found out a letter that said, oh, between 6 and 9 years, the DEC expects you to meter your water, that's when I said, well, the people in Rotterdam have got to know. And you've got to speak out. And you can say whatever you want. But that's the truth of the matter. Now, we're hoping that through leak detection, and I will tell you this, I don't know if I'm going to be here in 2024. That's when the contract for selling water to Gilderland comes up again. Turn out. Tell the town board whether or not you want to sell the water to
So
them.
let me just ask you this. Is Rotterdam Junction's water the water that's being sold to Gilderland?
No.
There you go. There you go. It's not even.
We're separate entity, aren't we?
Yes.
Not our problem. That's a problem for the other water districts.
You would need to know, and Justin, you can tell me this. Do they have a special, do they have their own speedies permit, or is it all under one from the other end of town?
I believe it's a separate one.
Okay, then that might save you, because then your water,
Very well versed in what I'm speaking. There's a lot of stuff I'm not saying. I know what's going on. And you guys know that the state construction on 890 right now is using Rotterdam Junction's water and tapping off a hydrant. You guys know that? Because they said they had permission through the town water department to do it.
They always say they have permission.
Yes,
All the state
we should be
agencies.
getting a fee for it.
Yes. They're supposed to have
And
an RPZ on them and everything.
They're using our water, they should be paying the fee though.
Okay, I think the gentleman back there had a question regarding your water cost, the 668. So, just so you know, the town does a budget every year, okay? You guys are included, both, we'll say Water District 3 and 4, because that's how the town has them right now. We'll get into the details about 1, 2, whatever, later. So $668.87 coming to you in June. What's it come from? Your operation and maintenance budget, no debt service, about $363,000. And there's about 543 units. It was a very quick calculation they did. What's that magic number? $668.87. That is just your O&M budget, operation and maintenance, okay? It doesn't include debt service. If you're, hold on, if you're in District 3,
The maintenance that's done out here,
I-
you're not getting that.
I don't disagree with that. So keep in mind, I don't disagree with that.
You're right.
I look at the budget and that it definitely needs to be looked at. So keep in mind, however, the budget you guys are under right now is a 2022 budget, okay? It's in, you know? We don't have an opportunity to look at that budget again, and it'll come up in August and September.
The details you're speaking of are what define the situation of each water district.
Yes.
So you can't have the same details for different water districts, because we are a different scenario out here. We are a different scenario.
And you are.
By the details.
When you are a different scenario, so you compare it to our water district number 5 on the hill, everyone wonders, why is it so cheap up there? Okay, a much larger budget, okay? However, you got 12,500 accounts up there, and that works out to be the $157 that we're looking at. That's the difference, is economies of scale. You guys do have your own independent water district out here, 3 and 4, and you have your own separate operation and maintenance and debt service. So what we did talk about before is that's not the only part of your bill. If you're in Water District 3, which is pretty much the entire junction, except for Lower Craig Road, Extension 4, that goes out, coming back towards us, you have debt service associated with building the tank up on the hill and tying it back into the system, okay? That's about $165 you guys are paying
And
right
we
now.
wouldn't quite have that debt service if our monies from our district wasn't used for other districts in the past.
No, so
and
you,
not reimbursed.
so let's have the conversation. If you're a water district in New York, you are a water district. We can't take your money, okay? Your money is for your district, just like District 5, if you're a special district, the money has to stay within that district, okay? Do we play games? I'll say from a town. Justin, okay, is the water superintendent, okay, for operator, okay, for, well, District number 5. He also monitors your wells here, okay? The cost of that is split, okay, between the districts, okay? There's anything that's administrative, you gotta send a bill or something out, there's prorated costs in there. They're the ones that need to be examined as part of the next budget.
We follow all that, but what I'm saying is, and there's other people in this town that can attest to this, it is not fair for anybody on Putnam Street to have to call 2 of their neighbors and ask them to turn their water sprinkling off so they can have pressure to take a shower. There's water, it's not fair. If you want to charge these people and meter them and charge them $600 a year, you better make sure every hydrant in a junction is working, and I can open them and close them and not have to call these guys up at midnight. And you better make sure that everybody can take a shower with their sprinklers going, because you can't charge somebody for garbage service, and that's what you're gonna be doing out here.
So let's have that conversation. Hold on a second. Let's have that conversation. Mr. Bill brought it up, and I had asked him the question. We had a public information meeting here just a couple months ago relative to the safety improvements on 5S. As part of those safety improvements, the very first question that was asked is, what is the age of the water main that's on Main Street? And what we heard tonight is around, 1948, I heard? So once again, you guys are asking for the best of service. You do have very aged and antiquated distribution system out here. You're relying on the same pipes that were installed in 1948. How much longer are those pipes gonna last? Remains to be seen. When there's an opportunity to upgrade a pipe, you know, we're out in the state highway, we have an opportunity to upgrade a main, to put a new one in. We try to do that. We reach out, we try to get grant money. But you're never gonna get 100% grant. What's that come back to is a loan, just like your water storage tank, that comes back to debt service and would be increasing your water rates. So when we hear, again, you want the best of services, you gotta realize that comes with some sort of cost. That's driven by you guys. You either just say, Mr. Dotson, no, you want no part of that right now, and that's generally what we're hearing, is you want no part of upgrading a distribution main that's in your water system. We know back in 2009, you upgraded your water storage tank. That still has about another, I think, 8 to 10 years of payment on it. Okay, so you're gonna see that $165 bill for debt service for some time. The only opportunity you guys have to change that bill is for us to go in and look at your O&M charge to find out if there's an opportunity to reduce cost in there. Okay, and that's something that will be looked at as part of this next budget. District 4 users. You're my bigger concern, or our town board's bigger concern, in the fact that guys are paying over $1,200. If you're out in District number 4, you know, why is that the case again? You gotta pay the $668 for O&M because you're attached to this district. You gotta pay $165 for the water storage tank because you guys benefit from the water storage tank with fire protection, okay, and peak water demands. In addition to that, when the extension was done, you had to pay for the capital improvements associated with installing that extension, which I think goes back to like 2003, 4. That's another $430. Okay, so 2 debt service payments plus the $668 gets you up to $1,200.
Well,
that is high for water. What's that?
We're taking your word for that. I want to see the numbers.
No,
I want to, you have an accounting firm?
Yes.
Well, we would love to see how much you actually spend in Rotterdam Junction.
Well, I can
okay? Do you go after an insurance company when a car wrecks a fire hydrant? You blow up.
Actually, we do.
Yeah,
You don't put the hydrant, that's new, you do now.
I'm just saying, as a town board member now, I know that is a practice now.
That $356,000 you're about to hit us for goes strictly to our water district and not someplace else. That would be great. We agree, you gotta fix our water lines out here. But we know darn well you're gonna ship it to something else.
Let
Because
me-
that's what the board does.
Let me show the board members something that may enlighten them and kind of help them understand our frustrations, okay? These are bags out of hydrants. The name of the hydrant, Knotty Pine, Dave Bills.
Great job.
All these are marked over the past few years.
Just let them
Us,
know what's in there.
us doing flushing. When I say flushing, it means us running our trucks, pumping, doing some training on a specific hydrant, okay? These are rocks, okay, that come out of the hydrants. These are not rocks that kids played with, opened up, because half the caps you can't get off, so there's no kid taking the cap off. Look at that rock. This rock cost us about $60,000. The town gonna reimburse the fire department $60,000 for destroying the pump in our truck? No, our insurance company, right? This is what comes out of the garden hoses on Putnam Street.
Wow.
This is what are in the homeowners' filters. And you wanna charge them more money? I have bags of these. Bags. This is what comes out of your water mains in the junction. This is not fair. You can't charge junction people when you can't even maintain
So
what you have.
explain to the public how that got in there.
How this got in there?
How did they get in
Could have
there?
been a broken water main, it could have been a repair that got in there, but if there was flushing that needed to be done every year on every hydrant, not spot flushing, a couple hydrants here and there, this wouldn't be costing fire departments, taxpayers for the fire department, and residents that can't run their washing machines, that can't run anything that's plugged up. It's just, you guys gotta understand what these people.
Right, so, but that's what we wanna know, so
Broken
again,
hydrant
from
things.
a
I have
water
hydrants.
quality standpoint, hold on. So hardness, how many of you got softeners?
Everybody does.
Okay, there you go. So you have softeners right now, so it's either you have softeners or we have a municipal treatment system out there with softener, okay?
More money.
Exactly, that's why you don't have one, that's why we don't have one up on the hill, okay? Because that would be a district expense by putting that treatment. But you guys get along with that, fine. What about turbidity, coloring your water? Is it only after it's flushed? Do you get that on a routine basis?
You keep
No,
saying,
look,
you keep
I
saying
think it would
we're
be better
asking
if
for
you
the
didn't
best.
have rocks in your fire department, in your fire.
What I'm saying, what I'm trying to say here
That's a
is,
maintenance. That's a
you guys
maintenance.
aren't maintaining the water system that you have now. You haven't maintained it. The money you're saying you're taking and maintaining the system is not happening. We have transite pipes in the junction, which anybody that knows is asbestos pipes. Is there a plan to get rid of that? Have you guys looked into federal infrastructure grants before you tax the town?
We have.
Okay, well then why don't you decide whether you're gonna get an infrastructure grant to repair stuff out here before you go and tax the hell out of everybody?
So he brings up a good point, so we can talk about it. When we're talking about replacing the 10-inch asbestos cement pipe out there, that's exactly what it is. You didn't do any of these projects this day and age without being in a position to go out there and get grant and loan money, and there's lots of programs out there to do it, but it requires this type of input, public input, relative to submitting grant applications. They want to see from the public that you're outraged about the stuff that's happening in your water system, okay? That's the first step. One at a time.
Do you guys, do you mind? I'd like to just kind of set the stage, reset the stage here, okay? There's two separate issues that we're trying to address tonight. Water meters and why you're paying a June bill for your water that's over $600, okay? This is actually a third issue. The condition of the water here, okay? So
But it's detailed.
It's all water.
right, well let me just.
No, it's all water.
Well,
You can divide it as many times as you want to, it's all
No.
one, it's our water.
Correct me.
You're trying to play games with it.
we're okay. Let me try and explain here, okay?
Yeah, you're
There-
doing a terrible job.
Well, I agree. And that's why we're having this meeting tonight. And it is a little complicated, so I would like everyone to really try and understand.
We're the ones
Okay.
in your pockets, your hands are in.
Okay. But you know, your taxes don't go into my pocket, really. I get $10,000 a year. Okay.
That's not necessary. We're here to...
Hold on.
Come on, Joe, really? Come on, Joe.
That's
not necessary to say that.
There is no. hold on.
You're elected by the people, and you're supposed to be working for the people.
So why'd you take it?
No, I don't care. I'm
Okay, so there is no push for water meters, okay?
I got a letter in the mail saying there was.
It's fake news, okay? All right. Say that again?
Why did you make it public and you mailed it out?
We didn't mail it out.
Then who mailed out?
Our representative in the state assembly decided to attack this board. No, it didn't come from the town of Rotterdam, okay? We have not spent $1 on water meters, okay? So your taxes aren't included any expense towards water meters, okay? The money that you're going to pay in June, okay, you normally would have paid that amount in January's tax bill. You just never noticed it there, okay? There's less people in the water districts in Rotterdam Junction, so because of economies of scale, you each pay a larger share than people in the town of Rotterdam, okay? That $600 has nothing to do with water meters, okay? Our representative in the state assembly decided to make it an issue and try to drive false information out there to confuse us all, and he succeeded in doing that.
And the state,
okay?
and the state required that in January, it would be not included, that we'd have to pay it in June. It was a state requirement.
It was the
not
finance
town of
director.
Rotterdam.
Yes, it was.
It was a state requirement that it would be it'd be in the tax bill in January.
It's not a state requirement.
It was. The letter
It was
that I
done in
got-
December of last year by the previous finance director. She decided in order to avoid breaking the tax cap, she took the water and sewer operations and maintenance charges out of the June tax bill and put them into the June bill. So that's why everybody's confused. You normally would have paid that amount in January.
So right now, the January bill is debt service, the June bill is operation and maintenance.
So if you total up both bills and compare it to last year, you should see a 10% increase, but that's not because of anything, it's just taxes went up 10% from 2021 to 2022. But you were paying that amount in June, you were paying it in January.
Let that poor
Okay,
man
so the
jump
question,
in right there.
the question remains is where is that money going? Keep saying that people want the best of services. No, we don't want the best of services. We want basic service. We want to be able to shower without having to call our neighbors. We want a hydrant when it gets hit to be replaced and not removed.
Yes.
Which they've done numerous times out here.
Yes.
Basic service, not the best.
So what I'm hearing right now from your guys' standpoint, when we look at maintaining the distribution system out here, certainly not satisfied. You believe, obviously from years of lack of maintenance, okay, that you guys are paying top dollar and you're getting minimum service.
We want,
Am I hearing that
and we want
That's
you
the
to
stuff we need
understand,
to hear.
and we want you to clearly understand, the whole town board, we want you to clearly understand that the Junctions Water District is different than other water districts.
Yes.
We have unlimited water. We do not need to be metered. If there's a way that you guys can do your thing with the state, we do not need to meter our water. If we had
Justin, what's their
crappy
average
reservoir, we
daily
had to worry about, I agree.
Average day demand for this system, what is that running right now?
250,000.
About 250,000? Okay, so, about right for this size system, okay? And we have pumps that are out there, what are the gallon per minute on the pumps?
565 on 2, 370 on 1.
So yes, you have pumping capacity, you have pumping capacity galore, and of course you got a reasonable average day demand out here, okay? Hold on a second before I leave. Who has read the water quality report for your district? Okay?
Actually, it'd be good to know, because we don't know that, so.
So I gotta, this is the water quality report for your district. It tells you everything about what's going on here. Justin provides good information regarding the amount of water we pump on an annual basis here, okay? But more importantly, water quality stuff is in here.
Can I get a copy of that?
It's on the website. It's been on the town website. So this is on there every year.
We never have a problem with how the water department handles their, they do an amazing job doing that. Their problem is their personnel and their ability to maintain, flush, and repair hydrants as needed, because there's so many that are broken, and maintenance on a regular basis. That's not their fault. They do an amazing job with what you guys give them to do. I know we have an amazing water quality out here. I brought up transite piping because I know there's transite piping, and it's up in the air as of lately on what and how the pipe degrades, on whether their filtering system is up to standards to filter that. That's one thing that I think a lot of people would like to know. But I don't have a problem with how they run the pumping and filtering system out. They do
So
a
hold on a
good job.
second, hearing the word filtering, so I just want to address that, that's why we're here. So, Justin, you can help me out? You have 2 wells out there, okay? The water is literally pumped out of the ground, up into the building, it's chlorinated, okay? And off it goes to the distribution system. Am I missing anything, Justin?
There is no filtration.
No filtration at all, you guys have, just like we do up on the hill, coming out of the Rice Road ball field, we got some of the best water quality, okay, you can ask for in an aquifer, okay? That doesn't require treatment, okay? It only requires disinfection. However, we in Rotterdam all live with hardness, okay? Which is why you guys got softness.
I have concern with transite.
Okay, also.
That's what I want.
Rocks in the main.
And rocks in the main, yes.
And water pressure at our houses.
Yes. Now, so.
That's the part we have issues with, not the quality of the water, not the pumps, not the filters. The crap mains that are in the ground, because we don't have water pressure in our houses.
Where is the low water pressure in the junction? Who has low water pressure? Where is it?
Problem.
Who has what you consider is low water pressure?
Side streets.
Okay, and they do because they have very small diameter mains on them that are low.
The problem with that is when you restrict that, you restrict volume, not pressure. So if he goes to my house and tests my water pressure, he goes, I don't know what you're talking about, you. I'm just saying, most people go to the house, test the water pressure, and go, I don't know what you're talking about, you got plenty of water pressure. But 40 years ago, the pipe was this big on Putnam Street. Now, the pipe is this big, so I have high pressure and no volume.
Yes, understood.
So, and that's where it goes back to, why should I pay you more money when I can't utilize my water?
You were paying the same rate last year, though.
I know.
Hold on.
I didn't think it was fair last year.
Let's get back to that question. How is the water flow in your system?
We don't have an issue with water pressure, we do not have an issue.
And you got flow, so what it is smaller diameter mains on your side streets.
We don't have a problem with the water flow, we have a pressure with the rocks in the.
Well, yes, we heard that, we saw that, and that's maintenance.
I'll bring this up in the past years, this is way before any of these guys got into the water department. So, there was a fire hydrant on the end of Putnam Street. When they realized that Putnam Street just couldn't supply the volume to the hydrant on the end of the street, what'd they do? Took the hydrant away and capped it off. That was their fix, instead of replacing the main on Putnam Street. Knock it down, break it off, cap it off, done deal. Now we just don't have hydrant.
Right, that's
on Putnam Street doesn't have any volume.
I agree with you. It's hard to flush a main, you don't have a hydrant at the end of it, okay? Understood, okay?
So, you just have to understand our frustrations. Anytime there's any internet stuff going on, there's gossip going on, there's letters from Republicans, Democrats, whatever, trying to sell themselves. This is the details that we throw to you so you understand our situation.
Okay.
So.
Got that? Mr. Bill said.
I understand we went from, the building practice in January was on assessed value. Are we gonna go back to that?
Okay, so very good question. Okay, so I did go back and look at all budgets back to, let's say 2019. So what happened in the junction from 2019? As Mr. Bill stated, in 2019, you guys were in ad valorem. What does that mean? Water was charged to you guys based on your assessed value of your home, okay? So everyone in the junction was getting different bills based on their assessment of their home. In addition to that, obviously, you guys got, your debt service charges, okay?
When the 100% tax assessment came in, that was a big smack in the mouth to everybody too. So that affected the water bill.
It would have.
Yes.
So
Just remember that.
2020, just to let you know, an ad valorem charge, okay? 2021, an ad valorem charge, and as Joe mentioned, okay? 2022 budget, okay? That's when it got switched to units, okay? So there was a very good question in the back relative to, hey, what is the O&M budget, okay? Now everyone is charged the same amount, okay, where before you were charged on ad valorem based on your assessed value of your home. That's a pretty significant change. Okay?
I don't know if that's the fair way of doing it. I also got a question. Now, you're gonna charge everybody $668 because da-da-da. Are you gonna charge that on vacant land?
That I would have to go check to find out.
Because I own 3 pieces of property, and one's got a cornfield, one's a swamp,
Yes.
and the other one's a creek.
Okay, so hold on a second. So, in my business, okay, we would charge based on a service that's being provided.
Yeah,
Okay,
if you
under
got
an
water
operation and
if you got a
maintenance.
water service.
On your debt service, I know when they
Yeah,
form
we debt
districts,
service,
sometimes they
yeah, I
tax
understand.
everyone because you have the ability to, but this is Rotterdam, so that'd be something I'd have to check, just to make sure that we're not charging vacant parcels for O&M.
That's, I understand the bond we pay, but that's,
And vacant parcels could be paid out of
But
that
are you
bond.
gonna go back to assessed value?
We don't know that, that's why we're having these meetings, so that's something that we need to look at. You know, we're hearing a lot of good information, we're hearing again, for the amount of money you guys are paying, the $668, you know, you're not getting the service that you guys believe you should be getting, and we don't disagree with that. You know, you need better service down there.
But everything that
There's
they
no
wanna change, we
excuse
pay for it.
for not putting a hydrant back, okay, cutting it off, and then that doesn't do good for anyone, especially if you're on that street and someone needs to flush your main.
Mr. Myers?
What's that?
Mr. Myers?
Sorry, Mr. Myers.
Right. One question, one comment. Question, on the tail end, about 27 years ago, there was a new extension to the district down here from about the old Henry Ellers or so down to the Capola farm. Now, I've got a piece of property that the line runs by me. For 27 years, I paid $430 a year and have no water because it's vacant land. So you can add that up. But what I'm curious to know, the kind of Dave led into it a little bit, is that what is the intention if you are not hooked up as a service? Am I going to be attached with any more tax billing based on just O&M? Now, we bought into that O&M when we signed up for it, with the bond over a period of time. But I say, $430, well, it was a little bit less earlier, but for about 27 years and no water, am I going to get, is there going to be an additional charge that I'm going to see on top of that $430?
Okay, so you're hitting a number that's on my table here. So the 430, according to this, is District 4 again. And it is the debt service that's associated with that extension.
You didn't answer my question.
Hold on a second, you did confirm what Mr. Bills indicated earlier. Vacant parcels down through there indeed would be charged debt service. Now O&M, if you're hooked to the system, you have a service coming into your house, if you're not, and again, I answered that question earlier, from my standpoint, no, because you're not getting a service, okay, if you're a vacant parcel, and generally vacant parcels do not get charged O&M, well, I'm gonna check, because this is Rotterdam. I just know in other places that's never the case, okay? We always make the argument that you get charged debt service because you have the ability to connect into that pipe, okay, at any time to develop your property or to put a home in.
You can't be taxing on the ability. If I'm already paying for the pipe to be going
yes.
through, that's O&M. I've paid my freight. The fact that I can turn it on tomorrow, then you can deal with me then. But you can't attach any more money.
We would not, from an O&M standpoint, only when you connected would we hit you with an O&M charge.
That's my question.
Yes. So if you got a new service, you decide, hey, I'm gonna build a new home.
No service.
And you tap the main, okay, you bring service into your house, you're gonna be charged an O&M charge.
And now the comment, for years, not this administration, and maybe not even the couple before that, but like a lot of people here, I live here a long time. And the fact is, a curiosity that we've always had is that there are past administrations in the town of Rotterdam that have spent the water money that came in, the revenue that came in. Now, it was always my understanding that you're supposed to have like this water district out here,
it should be dedicated to this water district. If this district is putting money into a pot for operation and maintenance, to replace pipes, to re-drill, then they've already got their pot of money. And not your side of town or anybody else. They have their pot, they have their pot, they have their pot.
Yes.
But in the past, and not that anybody here is gonna deny it, but in the past, it was kind of lumped together, and there were times when it was used to help the budget to look good for voting. Now you can say it doesn't happen, but anybody here knows that it did in the past. My curiosity for these people, or as any of this goes further, even if the meteor thing dies, just as far as collecting the debt service, the O&M, is it set up, does the controller have it set up that it's dedicated to where the money is coming in from, irregardless of what the money is? So this district, I don't know how many water districts.
There's, so we're talking 3 and 4, which is the junction, and 5 up on the hill. So we're talking 3 and 4.
Yeah, so I'm saying, the money that 3 and 4 pay in stays with 3 and 4. The money that 5 pays in stays with 5.
That's state law, right?
Well, that's state law has been broken several times in this town for many years. All right, so, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong because you're not, you're right. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Right, Joe is correct from debt service, and is indeed true. The only game that can be played, and you guys are on top of it, is operation and maintenance, okay? Because it's commingled a little, okay? So you guys, if you guys go look, 2022 budget, there is Water District 3 in here, okay? And there's a Water District 4. If you were to check Water District 4, it's just debt service, okay? Because everything's in the budget for Water District 3. However, we know 4 pays that O&M charge because they're included in there. But there's a very detailed budget in here. And the nice thing about it, from your guys' standpoint, is you can go in here and see year to year to see where it's increasing. So one of the things I did want to bring to your attention is, if we were to go back to 2021, 2020, and 2019, those boards, when they did the ad valorem, looked at, hey, if there was a fund balance, they'd add fund balance, okay? They did that for a couple of years. Well, we go through COVID. How much fund balance do you think we have left? Not a lot. So when you see your bill this year, it's actually you're seeing the true cost of the O&M budget now with no fund balance, because there is no fund balance. That's something that's got to be raised again over time. You know, how does that go down? Well, we know when the times are tough, it's very easy.
We ran through that with the water tower issue years ago. There should have been, if you collect all this money for many years, and let's say you're not doing any O&M, you're not replacing the lines, or you're replacing the hydrants, and so that money is piling up, or supposed to be piling up. Then when it comes time to put that tower in, that's a chunk of change. Well, I'm not saying tit for tat, so to speak, but there should have been a big pile of money to pay for that water tower then, and there was not.
I was saying the
Let me
ideal world.
bring this point up, because this is important, even for you guys to know. This is important. Way back when the project for the water tower was being looked at and implemented and worked on, we asked that they did that they looked for infrastructure grants to do this project. We wouldn't be talking about any of this if we granted that out and you guys got monies to do that from the government, okay? You know what they told us? They told us, well, you know, if we couldn't find a grant that worked with the dollar amount that we need to do it. So we were lower than the dollar amount that we needed. So let's say $500,000. I'm way off. $500,000. They could only get it if it was $800,000. So instead of adding to the grant the replacement of water mains and hydrants and everything that would get them to that dollar amount and build that grant up to where we wouldn't be talking about this or paying for any of this right now, they dropped the ball and they failed us then. So our trust in the town board isn't real high.
You're indeed correct from a strategy
I know.
standpoint.
Listen,
Whenever you have storage,
23 years out here.
Storage and distribution with source, you're gonna score a lot higher, and you would be an ability to get a lot more
We could
potential
have
grants.
got this system here totally paid for and vamped if somebody on that board back then actually cared enough to research it and get a grant for us.
You wouldn't have gotten a 100% grant, but to let you know, they did get funding.
Pay something.
And you are paying as part of an environmental facilities loan, which was a lower interest loan at the time.
There'd be no debt payments going on right
Yeah,
now.
your debt would be much lower.
Yeah. So we hope as a community that you guys do due diligence and try to find us a grant to cover what we need out here and do an estimate on what it's gonna cost to fix all our broken mains and inadequate mains and plugged mains. And maybe that'll bump it up and we'll fall in the category to get a big grant where we won't even have to do any of
Okay,
this.
so what's a big grant for you?
I don't know, you guys gotta tell us.
So
the
the
dollar
maximum,
amount.
Doug is here as well, we deal with this. Up to about 60% is the best you're getting right now in a grant, okay, depending on how you score and your median household income for your community, okay? Is there money out there? Yes, absolutely. But that comes with defining a project, just like you said, okay, and trying to score. Your big issue right now, as you know, is distribution system improvements. That's what needs to be, okay, packaged with something else.
There's fire improvements, there's a lot of stuff you guys can bank into that to get that up, so you fall into a category that may be higher.
Just have to want to do it.
No, understood.
You have to know all your options and then work on it. You can't go at it not knowing what options are available.
Yes, and I would recommend for the community, please read your water quality report because you will have more information you will come to us with as part of packaging up something for a grant. If we were to ask you guys now, put your hand up. We have an opportunity to replace a 10-inch asbestos cement main from 1948 on Main Street. Okay, based on the fact that you would not get 100% grant, but potential for 60, would you be interested?
Yes.
Okay? Given how much you're paying right now, you would still be interested.
Right now, we're not paying that $668, no.
Well, you will be due first.
Well, what do you say? Now we're not. If we're gonna pay it, we'll pay it if we're getting something out of it.
Yes,
We shouldn't be paying it if
understood.
we're not
We
getting
would be
it.
more than willing to get that line replaced without you guys put a permanent $668 attachment on it.
Okay, understood.
And it's not just a water.
I got a question.
Hold on a second, we got a question down here.
I get 25% off my taxes, so because of military, my husband was military. So am I gonna get 25% off of that when I get it?
That didn't apply to your water bill. It's not considered a tax by the state. I get
District, it's a service.
that. I get that too. My husband's in the military. He served in the
Well, my
Marine Corps.
husband was, he died, but.
Right, but that doesn't apply to your water bill because it's not considered a tax under the law. It's a service charge. Same as, Spectrum and all those things. So they don't let us count it for that purpose.
That sucks.
I know, right? You should get a military discount on water.
That's for sure.
Water conservation. Thoughts on water conservation down here? Do you feel like, hey, we got a ton of water, who cares? Or do you feel like, hey, I got a leaking toilet, I need to fix it, okay? We know from your average day demand that actually down here, you guys are not in bad shape. What we would consider a reasonable per capita consumption for a community, because you're a smaller community. I cannot say that up on the hill, okay? The capital consumption figure up there is extremely high, okay, compared to the number of residents that we have. So what are we advocating again for is, reasonable water conservation, okay? You got a hose bib that goes on your backyard and it's coming out of there more than coming out of the hose. That's due diligence on your guys' part to fix it.
Where's it going?
Okay?
Right back into the water.
Okay, good question. So, hold on a second now. So he just answered your question for you. Okay, he says it goes back in the ground. What do we got to do to get that water to you? We got to pump it out of the ground. There's significant electrical costs. We got to treat it with chemicals, okay? There's chemical costs. And we have operators that we have to pay, okay, to babysit, okay? There's a cost associated with every gallon that comes out of the ground. So why, if you had the ability to reduce by 10% your average day, okay? Say it's 240 and we went to 220, and you started adding 20,000 gallons a day times 365 days a year, that's a lot of water. No, but you're paying for it. Look, you're paying for that. Next question. We already had a conversation about how old the mains are. One of the other things we're looking at is leak detection, okay? When's the last time we've been down here to do leak detection?
For a half hour that is supposed to be giving us a presentation, should we at least have out of courtesy?
We would love to give a presentation if you're ready for one. Okay, you ready, Doug? Hey, did you hand today out your handouts?
Yeah.
Have common courtesy to other people on the floor. People in here fight till there's comes off.
Well, you do have a very informed board. You've been doing a lot of research. You have it in Mr.
Could you speak up?
Wow. Well, as I was introduced earlier, I'm Doug Cole from Prime AE Group. I've worked for the town of Rotterdam as a consulting engineer for the past 30 years. The first 23 years I worked with John M. McDonald Engineering, and the last 7 with Prime AE Group. And I've also been a town resident for most of my life. So, as a town resident, I live in District 5. Do I want a meter? No. But as a professional engineer, do I understand the benefits of water metering on water conservation? Yes, I do. Now, the whole water metering issue did arise because of the water withdrawal permit. And as Evan correctly pointed out, it really didn't come into play until around 2013. And well 5 was authorized by BEC in 2017. And there actually was a water metering requirement in that permit. But not until well 6 was discussed in 2019 did they add additional requirements to put together a conservation plan and a water implementation, a metering implementation plan, and a schedule for that. So back in 2019, late 2019, Prime AE Group was retained by the town to put together this implementation plan, and it's just a plan. DEC said they wanted an outline. So how would you proceed, and how long would it take to actually get water meters in the town? Well, we put that together, submitted it to DEC. It took 3-4 months to review it, came back with comments, and we responded to those comments and submitted the final plan in June of 2020. It wasn't until January 7th of this year that DEC actually approved that plan. So now of course, they expect you to start implementing it. And that's when I think the public became aware of the plan, because it was finally approved. And I want to point out, one of the major things in the plan is public education and involvement. So this is our first informational meeting, and that's why we're here, to start that process. And it is a long process. The plan, the schedule, if metering is to happen in the town, it's a 6 to 10 year process. And there's a lot that has to happen between now and actually putting meters in homes. We're talking, having to do engineering studies, looking at the different methods of metering, looking at different ways to get the data, the information from your meter to the town. 20 years ago, the newest technology was driving past a home with a remote reader, and you would pick up the information, download it back at town hall, and generate bills. Well, nowadays, you can do cellular or satellite information and have it immediately. You can be monitoring your system and knowing places that have a problem before you see water coming out of the ground. You'll know that there's a leak. And so there's been advances in technology. So you would do a study to see what's the best fit for the town, what the costs are going to be, what's a typical installation in a home. And there's going to be multiple variations of that. Some houses have basements, some have slabs, like in Colebrook. Those houses were all built in the 1950s, so they're on a slab. So how do you put a meter in a house that has no space? So these things will all be looked at, as well as rates. What's an equitable rate to charge people so that it's fair? Do you go with an ad valorem rate? Do you have a base rate that everybody uses up to 50,000 gallons a year at a flat fee, and then they pay something above that. So there's many different kinds of ways to structure the rates. And as Mr. Dodson had mentioned, there's two components of your rate. You have your debt on your capital improvements, and you have O&M to pay for the pumping, the labor, all of those chemical costs to treat the water. And those all have to be looked at. So the resultant from that study would be not only a cost estimate for the overall project, but a projected user cost. And before the town can borrow any money, they have to have a public hearing. So that's where you, again, have your choice to be heard. But again, we're talking years down the road, and there's going to be public informational meetings as the process proceeds, if it proceeds. I can talk about some of the things that are beneficial for water metering.
You don't have to do that.
So, or you can read the handout. So, I mean, those are the main things really that it's the pertinent information at this time. This is where we are. We're at the very beginnings of this. And that's why your input is very important at this point in time. Not only Water Districts 3 and 4, I'm sure if we have an informational meeting up at Town Hall in the future, we're going to hear a lot of the same things for Water District 5 residents.
You know, we all have a shared objective to lower taxes, to lower the total cost it takes to pump the water to your house. And that's where conservation comes in. The less water that we pump, the less electricity we use, the less chemicals that we use, the less manpowers we use. So that's where the train of thought is here. There's nobody getting rich off of installing water meters. But I want to reemphasize too, we haven't spent $1 on water meters. We're not interested in moving forward with water meters right now. We have tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of capital projects that we need to finance and infrastructure that we need to improve. It's not anyone's objective here to put additional taxes onto all of us residents for something that isn't necessary right now. So, just want to emphasize that.
Mr. Cole, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
And I don't know if you're the right person to ask this to, but I'm asking because you're the water guy, right? Is there any benefit to looking at consolidating our water districts so things like our billing is spread, for O&M is spread across a greater number of users?
Well, that could be part of this overall study or a separate study. It doesn't have to be just related to water metering to look at a consolidation.
And that would potentially bring down costs for folks in the junction.
Yes.
Because costs for improvements to their water district would be spread across the entire town.
And again, right, everybody's a town resident, they're looking to get the same level of service, so put them on an even keel.
As long as that's how it happened, because in the past, they borrowed our money to fix stuff out there, and we never got it back. And
Yeah,
then
I
we asked
mean,
us for money.
To be fair, when
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna stand, it's easier to project, but when I came on the board, I absolutely saw where there had been special districts maybe not managed the way they should be, and my inner lawyer went, ugh, but, I try to keep an eye on how we move money to make sure we do move it where we're supposed to. And when I got on the board, Mr. Villano was a huge proponent of making sure special district money stayed in the special districts. But my thoughts are, if we look at consolidating District 5 with your districts, we're gonna spread out the costs across the board. That gives you 12,000 more people to spread the costs over, because as much as you guys are complaining about hydrants here, we hear the same thing in Colebrook, we hear it across town. So when we go out to do new hydrants, right, we have to competitively bid that, or we have to find a contract that's already been awarded out there. We can spread that cost across the whole district, so it's less on you guys, which makes sense, because the aquifer's providing water for our town, right? If we're looking at consolidating these services, it just makes sense for everyone. And I know there had been some discussion previously about trying to do it, and we just didn't get that far. But I think it makes sense moving forward to work with, our finance folks and with our engineering folks to figure out how we're gonna consolidate this And you know, the same applies to like the sewer districts at the other end of town. I'm not on a sewer, but same thing. As we are extending these small districts, we have costs that are spread out across 10 parcels instead of 50, 100, 200. We need to start looking at how we're gonna save people money, because I know people in the junction feel like you're separated from the rest of the town. But you know what? I'm a Shellmont mom, so you know I drive back and forth to pick up kids all the time, to play with their friends. We are one town. Our services should be equal across the town. Our services should be more than adequate across the town. And we shouldn't be worried about you guys screwing up your trucks because you're pumping rocks out of our hydrants. It's ridiculous.
Agreed.
So if we want to seriously deal with this issue, then we need to wrap consolidation into this project. And you know what? Maybe the DEC looks at that and says, you guys are making efforts to go in the right direction. Don't worry about the meters right now, or hold off, or we'll continue to look at that down the line. Because there's other things we could and should have been doing 10, 15, 20 years ago that we're just starting to get to the tip of the iceberg on. So, I mean, those are my thoughts. I don't know a lot about consolidation, but I'm willing to do the research and to assist in whatever way I can to
That's
help
all
get
we
it
ask.
going.
We ask that you guys be willing to look at ways. In this economy right now, nobody wants to get a letter in the mail saying it's gonna cost them another $600 for anything.
No,
They
you know-
cannot afford it.
No, that eats up my emergency fund, right? My car gets a flat tire or whatever is now going to water bills. It's ridiculous. We can't continue on this path. And the only way to get off this path is to be a united front.
When the
So-
assessment went in, I went to a fire call. This elderly lady had no tax. She didn't have any tax in her house. This was after her assessment and her bill went up. The only thing she had in her refrigerator was cat food. And that bill did that to her.
Yeah.
So that's why we do not like what it looks like is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. And, you know, when it comes to assessment and reassessment, I'm not the right person to talk to about that. I don't think we're in a position right now to look at future reassessments, even though I think the real estate community really pushes that,
I
but.
don't bring it up as an assessment.
No.
I just bring it up as people
I
are
absolutely
strapped.
agree.
Now they're
You
gonna
know,
be strapped more.
I moved to Rotterdam because my grandparents lived here. I had grandparents in both ends of town, and, you know, they struggled to pay those bills. They paid taxes here for what? My grandparents on the Mahonison side built their house in Colebrook in the 50s. My grandparents on the Shellmont side, whose house I bought and moved into and raised my kids in until recently, built their house in the 60s off Keller Ave. And, you know, we're putting people on a fixed income in a really bad position. So whatever we need to do to realign this or to get out of this situation, we need to seriously look at the financial, the engineering, and the legal aspects of how we shift this. Even if it means fighting the DEC on their rulings about metering and whether they've made a proper determination that we are required to have meters. So, that's my 2 cents.
Back there, sir.
Yeah, going back to the conservation piece, water metering aside, what are some of the things that, to me, conservation is paramount, not only just for us here in this room, but also for the future generations that are going to be living in this town. I don't believe the aquifer is an infinite supply of water. So you do need to start conservation now. So aside from water metering, what are some of the things that the citizens can do and the town board can do with respect to education and conservation efforts now?
Well, I can tell you that the town water code already requires odd even watering based on your address, and it's only allowed from 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on those days. But other ways to conserve water is just to be mindful of your outdoor water use. If you have a lawn sprinkler system, and I know I've seen it this spring when a lot of people, they started them up and some of the zones spray halfway out to the road. Well, go adjust it. Just spray your grass, don't spray the asphalt. If you have a leaky toilet, a dripping faucet, fix it. I mean, it just helps. It's the small things that add up.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to see the town do some, using the word research again, like my colleagues did, is I really think that a strong leak detection program is a big part of this, a very big part of this. And again, from where I sit, this was extremely educational. I admire your passion. I respect your passion. And on behalf of this board, I can say that I hear you loud and clear. This, to me, you're absolutely right. This is unacceptable. This is no way to live. Okay, so if we can make this a priority, and if we can, get involved in that grant writing, but again, from what I'm hearing, if say this whole thing costs $5 million and we can get 3 of it, the debt service for the other 2 is something that's acceptable, so you don't have to live like this. To take on what Mr. Dotson said, and thank you, Mr. Dotson, for that, eloquent description of, I guess, what we can do for a living in this whole thing about water, because I learned a lot tonight.
I bring a lot of this stuff up. I can tell you that you're 100%. Your leak detection would find leaks in this system that if you capped would help you more than any device that you can put on your homes. Any shower, limiter, anything. Fixing the leaking mains that are leaking as we speak will save us more water than anything they want to bolt onto your house.
This gentleman right here.
You said, Supervisor Collins, that we're selling our water to Gilderland. Could we up the fees for what we're charging Gilderland, or how, to offset our a little bit?
We can't right now because we're tied into a 4 or 5 year contract, and so right now we cannot. But I will let you know that Gilderland has reached out, kind of sent out feelers to buy even more from us. My feeling is, if that were ever to go through, I know other municipalities that if you buy water from them or if your sewer goes to their plant, they charge you 20% on what our cost is. And my feeling is we can't just charge them for the cost per gallon of water. If one of our big motors goes on one of these wellheads, maybe 10 years ago it was $40,000, what do you expect the price to be now? Okay, so, so even if we get $800,000 from them, let's say in the course of the year for the water that they buy from us, if one motor goes, if we have one big water main break where we have to get Larner in because they have the equipment to really dig the holes and everything, what have we gained? We've gained nothing. I personally am not a big proponent of selling our water. Interconnections, yes. We should have interconnections with every municipality by us. So in case we have, God forbid, a fire or a large break, they can feed our system. Same for them, we can feed their system. But I don't see any gain to why we have to sell them water. Because it's right now, they buy our water at $3 for the first $3 a gallon for the first 45 million gallons they sell, that they take. After 45 million, we drop the price to $2.75. I don't get that. I don't go to the market and I buy 10 cans of soup. I don't get a bargain on the second 5 I buy.
How was that figure negotiated at the beginning?
I wasn't on the board back then. I don't know.
That would have solved our town's problems if it was negotiated.
Going back to the rocks in the water system, there's in District 5 also up on the hill. It's throughout the system in general. It's not just, it's probably worse down here, but we have found rocks in the system up Altamont Avenue.
Right, so you bring up a good point. They're getting in here when we have water main breaks, okay?
This was in the 80s.
Yeah, we need to make sure the guys are trained to plug the mains when they're open, because you got an open pipe. If you've ever been in one of these trenches when they're wet, in the middle of the winter or whatever, it's very easy for cobbles, stones and stuff to get in there. It's practice that they have to make sure that they implement during this to make sure they're protecting the main and keeping the stones out of the system, okay? We had the question, could we ever completely keep them out? It's very, very difficult depending upon what's going on in that trench, okay? So for us to stay up here and say we're never going to have a stone in there, we'd be lying to you, okay?
I just
It's very
want
hard
to
to
make
do.
the point that this is not just down here in District Rotterdam Junction, it's throughout the town.
Right. Okay.
I have 2 questions.
I have a question. Can someone answer my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
About metering. So if we go to the metering, does that mean every single household in the entire town gets meters or just out here? year it gets metered.
Because the DEC, in the water withdrawal permit, said townwide universal metering. So it'd be all residential, commercial, industrial users.
What about the apartment complexes?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Would it be each individual thing or just one meter for the entire apartment complex?
And that would have to be part of the study of how you would want to meter that kind of a user. And do you have different tiered rates for residential, commercial, industrial? So there's a lot that goes into this in the future to figure out those things.
Commercial entities like my business are already metered. I know because one year I paid $7,000 more because I had a leak that I did not detect, and I wasted 1 million gallons before we figured out why it was leaking. So believe me, I was paying.
If we stop selling water to Gilderland, will this go away?
No.
Why?
Already opened the case.
Doug, you did answer that question. The DEC has a new regulation that came in at 2013 as part of the water withdrawal permit that has conditions for water conservation, water audits, and water metering now. Okay, they're permit conditions. And as Samantha had indicated earlier, you know, the town's either got to take a position that, hey, we're complying, or we got to take the position that we're not going to comply, and that they're going to have to do some sort of enforcement action down the road if we do not comply with the plan.
So
There's only two directions we got.
So I'm confused a little bit, because if the ultimate conservation of water would be not selling it to them, right? We'd be conserving a crap load of water if we didn't sell it to them, Gilderland or whatever. So how is that conserving water by sending them water?
Because conservation isn't the only thing that they're after.
There's other things in there.
There's a lot more to this than just conservation.
And the state tends to encourage shared services and having these interconnected.
State to recommend.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely agree.
The water, what's
No,
that line item?
well, and that's why, to follow up to that, my questions were, how often is Gilderland going over their 45 million gallons?
Yeah. Well, what's the line item for revenue from Gilderland?
Right.
There's a number.
I'd like to.
300.
So we know,
180.
How much?
the first year, it was about
For the year.
300.
I think in the last.
First year was like 300, the second year was.
Last year was
100.
about 220,
That's what you got.
220, 230.
Yeah.
And what if any discussion have we had about the cost of breaching a contract? In business, you breach contracts when they're no longer financially beneficial
If they stop
to
selling
you.
it to Gilderland,
Right.
they're losing money.
Wow.
So they're gonna end up coming to us to make up those monies. So you don't want them to stop selling it to Gilderland
Well, the
because they
thought
need the
is-
income.
No, but you
Whatever
could
you're
breach
using
it, triggering a renegotiation of your
Yeah, I mean,
fees.
I think at the end of the day, we want to be good neighbors, but perhaps the rate, perhaps the, you know, again,
Maybe
we're a
the
part-time
rate
government.
should be up.
So as a part-time government, we
Correct.
rely, you know, for the record, if I may say something, okay? I was on that board that put together that, you know, that voted in favor of selling water to Gilderland. I can own that. I have no problem owning that because I believe in being a good neighbor. My thought process was, you know, when Albany has a water main break, Gilderland goes dry, God forbid that hydrant, and Gilderland goes dry, and the house burns down. Now, having said that, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what water rate should be. I'm relying on people in DPW who are with the town 20 and 30 years working full-time to set that rate.
I agree, but if we were doing it to be good neighbors, you guys are giving the water for free. You didn't do it to be good neighbors.
Well, there's a
You did it
revenue
because
stream
you're
that's
gonna
involved
hate
because there's maintenance and opportunity and costs involved, but
And
you
the
know, if that
chlorine
rate should have been
treated.
higher, you know, if that rate should have been higher, you know, don't you think
No,
somebody
I
in
think we were.
DPW who was with us for so long could have known what those rates should be? You know, we
We did it because it has to.
But, you know what else? We have a
Are
resolution.
being a good neighbor. I think interconnections are being a good
Right.
neighbor, because then they do get their water for free. God forbid they have something bad happen, they get their water for free. Selling it is a whole different story.
I'm
It's
in
a
favor of
revenue.
giving it. I think it's a good idea.
And I don't see why the new costs of chlorine, which is ridiculously expensive and difficult to get, shouldn't trigger us to renegotiate our contract with Gilderland and say, look, we're gonna renegotiate this, or we're gonna breach our contract and we're gonna get out, you can sue us.
As well as anybody, there's plenty of ways that you can get out of that.
Correct.
You know, emergency situation or something that
So-
hinders our water, you can get out.
I agree, so it's great to say, you know what, selling to Gilderland's a bad idea, fine, fix it.
Well, I'm not opposed to doing that, because we're making,
Right, because maybe that pays for our new water lines in part of the district, maybe it pays for new hydrants. They're paying more to get water from Albany because their treatment costs are more expensive than ours, because our aquifer provides a better quality product, right? So, it's already a cost savings, as long as you're coming in under what Albany is charging them, we're gonna make money off them anyways. And they want it so they can sprinkle their lawns when the Waterville Reservoir gets too low.
We have a question down here that's very patient, thank you.
I think that's actually not as much a question as at the end. Early on, you made the comment about state assemblymen, and that would be Santa Barbara, sending out a newsletter.
We sent out a letter.
Yes. I was one of the people who had contacted him because there was a thing in the Gazette about, the town board voting on stuff and voting not to have a public hearing right away. And so that makes everybody concerned about transparency. Me being one of them.
And we did kind of address that issue in the previous town board meeting, but it came down to, generally we're using public hearings because we're about to do something, spend your money, okay? We're not about to spend your money, okay? What we want to have is a public information meeting, which is what we're having tonight, to start detailing the plan, okay? Long-term plans that the town are looking at, and I can only say again that if we work together on this and there wasn't politics involved at times, we wouldn't be confusing our public, okay, about subtleties legal issues or engineering stuff where the public may not understand or the layperson may not understand the details of it. But we need a public information education program for our community. And the questions that we're hearing from you guys tonight, they prepare us so that we can act on your behalf, okay? It's not us just deciding, hey, we're gonna do water metering for the town. We get no input from you guys before you guys find out you're getting a bill for water metering or someone's coming to your house to install water. That's what we're trying to prevent from happening, okay? And that's why we're having these meetings, because there's too much confusion out there about what this board is trying to accomplish. And what we're trying to accomplish at this point in time is, one, is get your feedback. We're hearing things tonight that this board did not realize. We didn't know you had stones in your water mains, okay? That's input. We need to hear from you. We did not know you had a low pressure. We didn't realize, again, that you guys believe that you're being overcharged for the service. That's back on us. We got to figure out how we need to go back to our departments and say, hey, this is what's going on down there. What are we going to do to fix it? I think Sam said that several times tonight about the fact that we can talk about it all day long, but we've got to do something about it. That is the sole purpose of doing these meetings right now, is to get your input. Very valuable from the board standpoint is to hear just what you're saying. Yes, in the beginning, rough trying to get all this stuff out, but we're here purposely to get your input because you guys are paying for this in the end. That's the bottom line, okay? And we're not stopping here. We do plan on having other public information meetings, and we will circle back and have public information. As we continue to develop this, we need to come down and hear from you. There are opportunities coming up soon, and we've already started talking about packaging together some projects for you guys down here. We were not aware of the low pressure issue. That helps us write grants, and that's why we need to hear from you guys.
Low volume. Pressure's okay, low volume.
But the question
That is
is,
true.
the question I have is, people who have their own personal well on their property, do they need to be connected to a meter?
Well, that's a whole separate issue, okay? We do not, the state does not allow a private well to be connected to a public water system. That's a big no-no, because there's a potential for cross-contamination, and we certainly don't want that, okay? So the state and the town rules is there can be no interconnection in a plumbing system between a private well and a municipal water system.
So if she has a private well, she has nothing to do with it.
That's what it is. You can do that all day long, okay? If it's a private well not connected to the municipal water system. So
You can have a well on your property.
yes, and we do it by a permit. I believe we have a permit process that allows an individual to have a well on their property, okay? I will say up on our hill, There's very few of them, okay, that are pumping, and unfortunately for Rotterdam, more than half of our system is on-site septic systems. We don't have the space for proper separation between a private groundwater well and a septic system. And as communities develop, that's how you get away from that. You go to public water systems because you do not want contamination between a septic system and a private groundwater well, okay?
If somebody has a private well, why do they need a permit?
You know, only if you're gonna be connected to the public water system.
Yeah.
And we have that occurs quite a bit in Water District 5.
Madam Supervisor, I have a question. As we move forward with this, are we able to somehow incorporate and invite knowledgeable people like this gentleman to this
Absolutely.
process?
I
think a gentleman like that should be sitting in on these meetings with DPW and engineers and everybody else. Because,
I think the fire department and the town of Rotterdam, all of them play an important role and should be in conversations about our water system, because they're the ones that use it too. I mean, outside of our individual homes, it's the fire department. I usually go to the chief's meetings. I missed the last one because I had to be at the senior center. But I've heard about the fire tower. We're trying to get the Wi-Fi down there for your training. In fact, it should be up and running soon. The paving, the gate, and hydrants. Hydrants are a big issue throughout the whole town, okay? Because, I can't go, it's just.
It needs to be addressed.
Yeah, okay?
Are any other towns in the area besides, I think, Scotia meters? Is anybody else?
Scotia and Niskian are the only ones that cities connect.
The city of
Does not meter.
Schenectady and Rotterdam don't meter. Everybody, even Princetown meters.
And how hard are we gonna fight now?
And the laser's on us now. In the state, just statewide, majority of systems are already metered. From a regulatory standpoint, enforcement for DECs, it gets smaller, they can focus on the ones that have opposed it for decades. You know, we just happen to be caught up in that system right now, in the rules and regulations that are out there. And we gotta decide on how we wanna approach it, and that's we're hearing overwhelming tonight, no water meters, correct?
You gotta be commended for doing this.
Jack, do you know,
This is a step one.
with DEC, is there any way you can approach them, because this is where it has come down onto us? Is there any way that you can put together, the town could put together some kind of a hardship situation to rethink what they've kind of mandated? I mean, I don't, maybe the attorney would know that. I mean, would there be a way to attack it, you know, from a letter writing, phone call type thing and say, this is too much of a burden for this town at this time, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, you can always do that approach, but just so the public knows, we did have a meeting with the DEC. We brought them into the town hall, we sat down, we basically told them where we stood on the issue. We conveyed to them that we believe the approach initially should be water conservation, a water audit to get numbers down that are more reasonable. But we also conveyed to them is, why would we want to be spending money on water meters right now when we have infrastructure improvements that we need to get done before we even consider water? You know, why should people have low water pressure, okay? Or not enough volume, okay? We had all those conversations with them, and they do know where we stand right now relative to doing that. We are gonna do upgrades to our antiquated distribution systems before we even consider spending one dime on a water meter, okay? And that's where we need to go. I think you got what
Let me get a woman in the back. Yeah, you can.
Okay, I have a question. You sent out a letter, 4/19 to 22, about paying the $600, District 3, 4, and then the other district, I think was 5 was lower. What's going to happen to people that cannot afford to pay that? You're giving people less than 2 months to pay that money. What are you going to tell the people that can't afford it?
They are going to have, and I'm not saying this is going to solve it unless, you know, you hit a number in the month, but they are going to have from June 1st to July 31st to pay without penalty. All right, so at least you have a 2-month window. I'm not saying,
It was one.
yes, and we extended it to 2. I'm not saying that that's going to always help everybody depending on their income, but you will have at least the 2 months to do it.
And to be clear, I'll stand so you can hear me. To be clear, we don't want to encourage this, but if your water bill doesn't get paid, it gets re-levied on your January tax bill next year. So, yes, with a penalty, but if you don't pay it in June, the same way, you know, when it was $25 and $75 before, if you didn't pay it, it got re-levied on your January tax bill.
Yeah, so just keep in mind.
We tried. We couldn't do a payment plan. We were able to extend it one additional month.
So we did look into detail about those partial payments. We did get a lot of input. Our system is interconnected to the county system. We don't necessarily have the ability to do that right now, but that is something that we are looking into. We know other places in the state do allow different type of billing practices. Right now, our systems do not do that, but I think that is something, as bills continue to climb over time, you know, you do need to have the ability to do the cash flow, you know, where residents can do partial payments.
City of Schenectady.
Very easy for a smaller community like you guys. For 500, it'd be a no-brainer, but when you start doing 13 to 15,000 accounts, it gets very complicated, okay? But it is being looked into right now, okay? I will say that again, it can be difficult, okay, to make a payment, but be very careful in not paying, because when you re-levy, keep in mind in January, depending if you're in District 3 or 4, you're compounding, okay, a bill that's already high if you're in 4 because of the 2 debt service payments, the 431 plus the 160. You throw on top of that a 668, and that's a very difficult thing to overcome. So again, we cannot tell you how you pay your bills, okay? But do keep in mind that it compounds the situation over time.
Can you please try to send it out to people that don't have internet or computer, at least on a piece of paper, and break it down what we're paying, so people can understand. Why am I paying this? Why am I not paying that? I do not see why things are not broken down, but people don't have internet. People do not, in different areas, especially the elderly, they don't have computers, they don't have cell phones. You need to come down to normal people.
Paper copy.
Yes, and I believe we do. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The
We
thing
do
is,
send out in June, I think it goes out the end of May, a paper copy comes out.
Yeah,
To
you'll get a paper
property
copy
owners.
and it should break down your, our bills generally now break down debt service separately from operation and maintenance, and that was part of the changes from December and some of the sewer billing that you heard about.
I think it has,
And one person.
I think it has to be reiterated to everyone in the town that the way I understand it, this was in the January, used to be in the January tax bill that did come out. And I think it has to be, I don't know what the cost would be to have it reprinted, to send every single property owner, reiterated in capital letters, that this was original over the years in the January tax bill. This is not another levy on everybody all of a sudden. This has been extracted from the tax bill in January to be paid, though, in the month of June, to put everybody on notice now, not the end of May, not the beginning of June. Now, a specific letter in capital letters explaining it in big writing, so they got it clear and have a clear understanding of why they're getting this tax bill in June 1st or whenever it comes out. That's the way I understand it, and a lot of people, even maybe here, haven't got it clear, thinking this is additional tax. This is something that is there and it has been there for a number of years. And I think it has to be clearly identified. We gotta keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, I think we looked at whether we could mail something individually, and it appeared to be cost prohibitive. That's why we placed an advertisement in the Gazette with the information, because we thought that might get to the most people, the most residents.
Is that the first notification of that?
Actually, we've been talking about this issue from January, because we knew when we came in. Every board meeting, we try to talk about it. You know, every opportunity we've had to get information out to the public relative to this, we have done. Recently, as you know, we've had it on our website, the town website. We did put something in the Gazette. We did evaluate, again, what would be the cost of sending individual letters out. And we determined, again, if we had done that immediately in January, you know, you would have had time to like save and do it. We did not, that's on us, okay? One of the things that did come out of this is we need to have, as was mentioned in the back, better means to communicate with our public on stuff. You know, not everyone, as we know, is on the internet or using the computer, okay? Not everyone's going to our website, okay? There needs to be other ways that we can communicate to the residents about critical issues when they come up in a timely fashion.
Could it have been pushed back to, I'd say, September or October because of the
We
notification problem?
would have run into the billing for the school districts, and the receiver of taxes office can't run the bills and process them at the same time. So the timing was
I think it
hard.
would benefit you guys. This was an error on not necessarily your part, okay? You had a small role in it, but it was an error on the town board's part. So if somebody doesn't have the means to pay that bill, there should be something that you guys can do to say, hey, it was a little part of us, so we're not gonna charge you guys that fee.
Yeah,
to
I
help
mean,
you out. If they're not paying their bill, it's not because they don't want to pay money, it's because they don't have it.
You're saying the penalty, is that correct? Yes.
So, because if it was our fault, charge us. If you guys played a role in the problem, I'm not saying you did.
Yes,
Maybe
we
you
understand.
or maybe you didn't do something along the line. They can't hold us accountable if we don't have money to give you. So maybe from a public standpoint, that might benefit
Right,
you.
we can look into that just to see how we're restricted with penalties, because we
I-
are.
I think there are some restrictions, but that's why we tried to broaden that window that you can make the payment within. And if it ends up being a re-levy, you know, for some people, that's still problematic in January. But we're doing the best we can.
They know they're saving up for the speed.
I know, I agree. And I think, you know, I'm not like this, but financial people tend to say, well, if they thought they were gonna pay it in January, they'll still have the money in June. And I'm like, no, because you spend it on other things, right?
Sometimes it's
Your
an
kids
escrow.
need uniforms and new shoes, and your car needs new brakes and those things. So that money is gone by the time you hit June, because you didn't know you needed to save it for June. So I agree, we gotta figure out. Yeah, and if people have other ideas on the best way to get information out to people, even if it's just that we keep a list of people who, you know what, say, I don't have internet, I'm not gonna get that information, and we send letters to those people, that's fine too. I just think we do absolutely need a better way to get the information out, because we've been talking about this since December, and people are shocked by it, and it, you know,
Make a statement to the TV people right now, a clear statement.
I'd like to say how that always works, but that even gets confused.
Well, I'm hoping his career is gonna put a lovely statement with all the information in the Gazette for us.
Maybe if we had an earlier meeting in the junction here with the sign out in front saying that, you know, they talked about it earlier, 3 or 4 months ago, would have got us more prepared for it. Because it's kind of a shock. See it in the Gazette and then bang, we're getting hit hard like that. It
Yeah.
seems like a real hard
You
hit.
got to tell the people now again.
Yep. And to be fair, we've had some stumbling blocks as a board since January, so getting on the same page and figuring out how to move forward has been difficult.
The electronic sign is really nice, everybody sees it coming out.
I know.
If we said water bill raising in January, because then everybody would have been at a meeting here 3, 4 months ago.
They
We
would,
would have been
they'd
talking
be
about it
standing
earlier.
room only back there.
That's actually a good point, is to be able to use that sign, because everyone does go by it.
Yeah, everybody sees it.
Ron, you had a question?
Okay, so my take is, I think that governments, lower level and higher level governments and school boards don't use money efficiently because you're not spending your own money. You're spending everyone else's money. And I'm not saying you personally, I'm saying in general, this is what I see. I have a business background, I have an MBA. I know what it takes to run a business. I understand what it takes to operate a business. And I think the whole Gilderland water thing to me logically makes no sense. And Mr. Christo isn't here, but I was going to ask him, does he sell his steaks at Tops at cost? No, he doesn't. So I think that if you start to look at it from running a business, when it comes time to renegotiate that water contract, I would tend to make some money there. And I would tend to say, let's take that money, and if that picks up 40% of this bond, because it's only going to cover 60%, do you sell your steaks at cost, Evan? Do you sell your steaks at cost?
They're so expensive though, you kind of.
Joke. Sorry, Mr. Little here.
Don't ask him about the chicken
All right,
wings.
all right, chicken man. Regardless, point being is, I think that you could pick up some revenue that could fund some hydrants, water lines. Make some money at it.
Yeah.
Why would you not look at it from that standpoint? And if you sell them more, they pay less? That makes no damn sense. And I like your idea. I think that I live up by Shama. I don't want to pay more, but I don't see why someone in this room should pay $1,200. Someone in this room should pay $600. I'm paying, I don't know what it is, $300, whatever. I think as a town of Rotterdam, we are all one town. We should equal the burden across the entire town. It makes no sense.
You take these numbers, right? You have operation and maintenance for District 3 is, it says the number of units and the amount. You add that with District 5 and divide it by the total number of units, you just dropped you guys from $668 to $178. And you know what? It raises mine in District 5 from $157 to $178.
Big deal.
I'll eat the
I'll eat
$20
that.
to make sure you guys have quality hydrants.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's more important. And you guys don't get the $668 bill.
Leak detection and consolidation, top two.
There you go.
And infrastructure.
Get a better price on our water.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Question down there, our fair share. Hold on a second, we got a question down here.
One of the things you had brought up is that many senior citizens struggle with paying the bills because, of course, we don't keep up with inflation. When I went over to the town offices inquiring about discounts for seniors, I had to ask the same question 3 different ways to get an answer. And yes, we were entitled to a discount, but I got told no twice before I got a yes.
On your assessment?
No, on what the programs that were available for seniors. And
Do you know what programs?
Was it for the STAR or Enhanced STAR for your taxes?
I think it was the enhanced STAR.
Yeah, because I was just talking, the state took that over. I was talking
So
to
it's out
one
of
of
our
the people
hands.
in the assessor's office, and
But to
before I did
requalify, you
that-
have to bring your paperwork showing your income to
But
the
now I
assessor's
guess they don't
office.
even do that. It's all gone over to the state.
Yeah, but it was kind of on the confusing side.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, what about this? Or isn't there something for that? Or it was like, this is just something that says senior on it. Because I think I should be eligible for something else. Because a couple of friends had said, well, gee, we applied for this or that. So I had written it down. Finally, I found the scrap paper in my purse and said, what about this? And they said, well, yeah, you can apply for that.
I'm sorry you had that experience.
So it's just, like if they had a little bulletin down there and said, look at
Yeah.
this and see what you can find.
Yeah, I think that's a great
apply.
idea, because the same, as I was saying before with the other lady, my husband's in the military, so we get a military exemption for him. But also, depending on whether you're a combat vet, whether you're a widow, all those things are different discount rates and different information that they
Slightly
need,
different
so.
categories.
Yes. I think we can talk to the assessor's office about having better frequently asked questions out there available for people.
It's $668 this year. 5 years from now, what do we anticipate that fee being? Is it still $668 or would it go up?
You would have to ask that questions in these times with inflation, okay, versus times, this is crazy time, okay? The key is, and it was addressed back there again, is maintaining the water system and keeping an eye on your cost from year to year and public input. When we're in budget time, okay, in September and October, it's honing in on your District 3, because that's really where it is, and asking the questions of why is it that much, okay? And then there were many people asking questions back in December when this budget was approved, specifically about changing coming out of ad valorem to a unit charge, separating debt service in January from O&M in June. There were some very spirited conversations at Town Hall by the public on that, okay? And of course, decisions were made, and then of course, the tax levy was prepared and the budgets, and here we are having a conversation about it. We have another opportunity coming up again in September, October to examine this in detail. We've heard where you guys stand on it. You know, it's on us now to go back and look, are there potential savings in this budget on your behalf? We can look at the consolidation. That doesn't happen overnight. You know, consolidation process sometimes take a year or two, but these are all very good things that you're giving to us so we can get into the details, okay? And we'll start. So will it happen next year? Not likely, but as we go into the following year, there's a potential for some of all this to come together now, and we can kind of like shore up and stabilize, you know, your cost for operation and maintenance. Okay? Yeah. Mr. Hanson.
I've got a question and probably a statement. The question is, I have a 2-bedroom house at $668, correct?
Yes.
The guy next to me, maybe he's got a 5-bedroom house. Is it still $668?
Yes.
Now, does that make sense to you?
No.
Okay.
So our
I
example,
thought maybe it was me.
our example in Water District 5 on the hill, again, comes down to if you have a senior citizen that has water, and then you have a home that has an in-ground swimming pool, a sprinkler system, and a garden, should they be paying the same? Okay? I think that answer's pretty easy. Okay? That's part of what Doug was talking about. We need to examine the rates in the town. I don't care if it's metering or not. You know, you can have different rates for different situations. Okay? The easiest way.
Based on assessed valuation.
And it has been. That's one of the methods, and that was brought up earlier. That's ad valorem. Okay?
The second question is the statement you made that items appear in the paper and online, and I think that was a cheap political shot that our representative made to the whole board. They didn't single anybody out. They nailed the board.
Listen, I will say, on his behalf, he did us a favor. Because I can say the board has fielded hundreds of phone calls, and we've been able to talk to our constituents, our property owners, our residents of the town. We've learned more things about the people of our town, not about metering, about a vast variety of different things that have been going on in our town for years. And from that standpoint, it was a blessing. Confusing people is not a blessing, but to get that interaction, we would love to have this kind of like turnout at a board meeting where our public's coming to us and hammering us on things that we can do better as a board. That's exactly why we have these meetings.
We should just hold all our meetings down here. They're always well attended.
Always well attended.
Sure.
I'm okay coming over here.
I just want to thank the town board for choosing Rotterdam Junction to kick off these information sessions. So thank you very much for coming down. Yes, ma'am.
You have conservation now, like you said, every other day for certain hours. And it's only listed on your website. Could you publish it in the newspaper that has started, that people know?
Yeah, I think.
Who enforces it?
So actually you can be ticketed for it, I believe.
We have not done a very good job with enforcement.
But we've had changes in the past in what hours we were using because we did have some drought conditions a couple years back. So I think we need to standardize our water times, and then we should get it in the Gazette just like we did with the water billing issue, just to get it out, make sure people know.
Well, they didn't say anything this year, so we can water whenever we want.
I haven't even watered yet, so.
I think enforcement is very important. During our first snow emergency this year, we said to the police department, well, we said to the plow drivers, we said, okay, if you go down the street, because well in advance, everybody knew we were calling a snow emergency. Say, okay, if you go down the street and there's cars parked out on the street, beat the horn.
Block it.
Nobody comes out, call the police. The police came, went to the door, either told them you have about 15 minutes to get your car moved, or you're going to get a ticket, or it's going to get towed. Okay, that was the first one. Second snowstorm we had, the roads are clear. They're all pushed back because nobody parked on the road. And I think that's what's got to happen with the watering. Start giving out tickets. It won't take long before the word spreads. Oh my God, it's a $50 ticket. And then everybody will be doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that one for snow, I'm hoping. it works
Guilderland
for
gives you
water.
$100 ticket. We want their money on it, so.
They're making money off our water.
Yep, we want their ticket money too.
We have one right here.
I just have a question. I know that there's been mentioned a few things about the fire hydrants. And it's been at least 8 years when we had the fire here on Main Street, where there were a lot of hydrants that were broken and couldn't be used, so that the town had gone through and put new hydrants in. And I guess I'm just speaking on behalf of the maintenance of those, because since then, I had a new one put on my spot, and they just came through like a month ago and flushed, since way back then.
Okay.
So I
First
don't
time
think
that
that's a
was
long
flushed?
time.
That was that the first time? Okay. So we did up the ante relative to flushing, and, you know, part of flushing, you know, there's more than just opening the, you know, the hydrant and let water. There's lots of different ways you can flush, and there's protocols that you can do, like exercising valves at the same time, greasing. We're getting into the more details of that now. It hasn't been a past practice. We would like to see it done more. So we're dealing with how can we make that happen with the resources that we have. So that is another thing that we're looking into. One of the things we're really trying to do is fix the hydrants that are broken. That's our first step. We're taking baby steps. Let's get those done first.
Can I make a real quick suggestion to the board?
Yes.
To work out with the water department. They need to have some type of hydrant identification system. There isn't one. I should be able to call the water department and say, hey, hydrant 27 in my district's bad. I took it out of service. They should come out and have a maintenance log. Listen, it's technical age, it's very easy to do. They should be able to look and see what was done, if the hydrant was repaired. I gotta be honest with you, I probably have a handful of hydrants right now that I've called the water department and notified them that they're broken, that are still broken. So some maintenance system that each hydrant has its own number.
Right, and we have I'm looking at a map right now that shows them being numbered, but there's no tag on the hydrant that says what it is. Okay. They are numbered on the map.
Years ago, we used to have our maintenance program used to be you flushed for 3 days. While you were flushing an area, you realized which ones were broken. Then on Thursday and Friday, you went back and you fixed the ones. If the whole thing was, I don't know much about them, but I guess there's some kind of seat at the bottom where it goes in. And if it was totally busted or you had new ones, you put the new one in, you took the old one back to the shop. If it was fixable, you fixed it, and that's how you went through the town. So I'd like to see us get back into that.
So we have a maintenance system, and that's very important, because when these guys pick the hydrants to flush, they find a situation with a hydrant, they log it, they know what they gotta fix on it, they fix it. That's the ones they flush. They never flush all of it.
Exactly.
I find them on Monday nights when I'm drilling in random places, and then I call them and say, hey, this hydrant's broken. And then I say, well, where was the fire?
Doesn't matter. Who are you calling our DPW with that information?
Yeah, we call the water department, and we say, hey, hydrant's broken, and they come out and they turn it off.
So we may want to change that protocol and have you call into DPW or the town, because we log all that stuff, and then we can turn it around and give them as work orders to those guys to fix them.
There should be there's kind of not a system now. So
Yeah, we need to improve that.
A good system would be great.
Okay.
I think it would get them repaired much quicker.
You learned
Yes.
a lot today.
Yeah, boy, are we.
Absolutely.
You learned an awful lot tonight.
Yes, we are, Melvin, we are indeed.
You know, and the key to it is that the brain power from many people, you cannot be blamed to have all, don't disrespect anybody, but the brain power on the board alone cannot deal with a lot of these issues alone. But the brain power that's out here from the public coming before you and having this kind of meeting is unbelievable. And what you learn from it and what you'll continue to learn, it'll make you better representatives of all of us.
Agreed.
Indeed, absolutely, yes.
Madam Supervisor, if no one has any other questions, I'd like to move to adjourn.
I agree, and we will hang around for a little bit if you do have other questions. We do have some maps up here, but if you want to go home.
And thank you, Doug, for standing there for so long.